Possibly the best release that we have seen in forever, easily the best release of the year, is coming to Pokemon Unite next week. That is Psyduck, our newest supporter. And whew, it's been a minute since we've had a supporter. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know before this Pokemon makes it to Eos Island. Let's start with the basics. Psyduck is a novice difficulty ranged supporter, and I think that's about true, even though there are a few things inside of its kit that are really exciting. One move particularly is kind of insane. You know, there are a few that are pretty insane. We're gonna take a look at items, move sets, just about everything in this video, so come along with me, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! Psyduck's basic attack never becomes a boosted attack. It is simply a basic attack the entire time, shooting water at your opponents. This attack does very little damage. It's based on your attack stat, and you are a special attacker. So you will often not be getting a lot of value out of this. You'll be getting a lot of value out of all of Psyduck's moves. Before we get into moves, let's talk about Psyduck's big passive here, this mysterious power. Once it gets activated, you become invulnerable completely for a moment, and then a pulse wave shoots out from you and you hurt your opponents. While this is active, you can see this bar under Psyduck is fully charged. All of your moves have decreased cooldowns and all of them have a new effect. You will increase this gauge by taking damage from enemy Pokemon, not wild Pokemon, and if your allies near you take damage. You can see I was invincible there for a moment, and now my moves all have additional effects as well as reduced cooldowns. I should also note that coming out of Mysterious Power has a moment where you are not able to attack. So when you're going into it, you're invincible for a sec, you're going to shove your opponents, and then coming out of it here, right now as I'm autoing, I cannot attack, but I can take damage. So now that we know what Mysterious Power is, let's get into Psyduck's first two moves. We have Confusion, which deals damage to enemies and stuns them briefly. It also moves through targets, so you could stun multiple enemies and wild Pokemon. Tail Whip is a sure hit move that decreases opponents' special defense. When Mysterious Power is activated, it increases it by a greater amount. So if Venusaur hits me right here, I go into this invincible state, hit him, decrease special defense, and I can continue to hit them with moves, dealing more damage now that my Mysterious Power is activated. Your first move selection is between Surf and Bubble Beam. Let's talk about Bubble Beam. Surf is like I think, but let's talk about Bubble Beam. Depending on Bubble Beam's power level, it could be incredibly good. Bubble Beam is going to hit multiple enemies in a line, and it's going to leave these bubbles on them, as you can see with all of these enemies. Whether you or an ally hits these with your basic attacks, you will pop these bubbles. Every time you're popping these bubbles, you can see the additional damage that is sparking off of all of these enemies right here. Hitting multiple enemies on the enemy team with this, and then your allies attacking them, could be massive in a team fight. Also, when a bubble pops, the enemy is slowed briefly. When Mysterious Power is activated, your bubble pops are going to do increased damage. We just took out Venusaur right there. Take that, buddy. At level 11, your plus version will provide a brief stun when the final bubble is popped on a Pokemon. Again, hitting multiple enemies in a big fight and your team following up could be huge. And this would pair really well with Pokemon like auto attackers. You know, Cinderace or something like this would absolutely love being paired with a Psyduck. The next first move you can choose is Surf. When you cast this, a wave flies out in front of you, and then you stand on this wave surfing around your opponents, where you can use moves and auto attacks. At the end of it, you do not cast another Surf wave, but you can end the move early, even slightly early, to make sure that you get an additional cast in on your opponents. When this is in the Mysterious Power mode, every time you cast Surf, you are casting out 2 waves. It actually does a lot of damage. Here are those 2 waves right there, both of them coming out, and then another 2 waves when you are casting it to end the move. Also, when you get Surf Plus at level 11, when you hit an enemy with this, they are going to do reduced damage. It looks to be about 20 to 25% reduced damage when you are hitting them with Surf Plus. So if you're able to hit the enemy team with Surf Plus, they're going to do a crazy amount of reduced damage to your allies. Allies that touch the waves are also going to have increased move speed, and when you hit opponents with Surf, you're going to slow them down. It's kind of the coolest thing in this Pokemon's kit, but it has a few insanely cool things. Now, your next 2 move options are really exciting. Let's start with Psychic. Psychic is just insanely cool. So you can see that you cast Psychic out in a pretty wide area around you, dealing damage. And if this hits an enemy Pokemon, the effect is really exciting. So whatever Pokemon is hit closest to the center of this move is basically targeted by this move's additional effect. And I'll show that to you here right now. So when I use this move, I'm going to deal some damage to my opponent here, and then I'm going to kind of create this like area around me that I have influence over my opponent in for a moment. And I'll show you what that means. Psychic is also going to stun. You see a brief stun right there when I hit my opponent. Inside this area, I am able to control my opponent for a moment here, creating insane plays. I could literally hit the enemy mage and then bring them back towards our team using the next pull of Psychic right here. It is insane that you're able to move enemies around like this, and it's going to be so crazy fun. Again, here it is on the substitute doll, so you could see it. You could take enemies, push them up that way. You could hit them, push them further away from your team. You could bring them in closer to your team to get KO'd. It's like, it's a little tricky to hit. It has a little bit of a windup, as you can see, but if you do hit, the control you have over your opponent is massive. When Mysterious Power is active, not only do you get the first stun, you also get the second stun when you bring them in, which can be really huge. And then the plus version of this move decreases special defense when you hit an opposing Pokemon with this move, which is really nice for any team that's running special attack, but also, I mean, just in general, lowering their special defense for the moves that you're going to deal damage with could be really nice. Your next move option is Disable. Disable is a sure hit move with a hindrance. It's going to stun your opponents, and it's a really interesting move because it's actually going to affect their move cooldowns. So it bounces between targets. Let me show you it right here. Bouncing between all these Swablues and Altaria, you're able to bounce between a target twice. So it couldn't hit two enemies and just bounce back and forth infinitely. It bounces 5 times when you hit with this move without Mysterious Power. With Mysterious Power on, or as kind of I look at it as like headache mode, when that is on, it looks like it bounces about 9 times. Still, however, it would only bounce between a singular enemy twice. So this is the first move that is going to affect the move cooldowns of your opponents here. You're going to hit them with it, and the last move they use, that cooldown is increased. Or if they haven't used a move yet, the next move they use will have increased cooldowns. The ramifications of this in a big fight obviously could be massive, but it could just be so annoying fighting against Psyduck in lane. Like, it could be a really, really crazy move. And the other amazing thing about it is, once again, it is a sure hit move. So as long as they're in range of you, you are able to hit them with it, and it will bounce between enemies and wild Pokemon. This also slows the opposing Pokemon there for a moment. You can see it bounce around between Venusaur and that wild Pokemon there for a sec. And it's just going to continue to increase the cooldown of Venusaur's moves while I'm hitting it with Disable. Obviously, I have cooldowns turned off right now, so I'm kind of messing with it a lot, giving those extra slows and stutters there, as well as the really nice move cooldowns. I can't wait to see how this interacts in the game once this Pokemon is like finally in our hands, because this could be insanely powerful. The plus version of this move is going to increase the stun time on it, which is just a nice little benefit if you hit level 13, which is interesting that Psyduck actually has a level 13 power spike for its plus move. It could be a little high for some supports to get to. Now we're going to talk about the Unite move. The Unite move does damage in a huge area around Psyduck. You can see it right here. I mean, this is a massive area of influence, dealing damage 3 times. What it's also going to do is increase your headache gauge. That Mysterious Power is going to charge. You can see right here your headache gauge charging, and it should do about 50% of your headache gauge every time. I think it's exactly 50%. So if you were to be able to use 2 Unite moves, it would fully charge. But really what's happening here is you set up an opportunity where you know you are going to be able to charge a decent amount of your gauge. You use your Unite move, push forward so that you can move into that Mysterious Power mode. So let's say I'm fighting this Bulbasaur right here. They've already charged a decent amount of my gauge. I go into Mysterious Power and get another shove right there, and then start using moves and doing crazy damage with really nice effects added to them, right? I could hit them with Psychic, I could hit them with Surf, I could do a lot of really great stuff once I'm in Mysterious Power mode. And I think that's going to be the combination here with your Unite move, is waiting until the fight is kind of going to the point where you're going to hit that threshold when you use your Unite. Not using your Unite too early and then having your headache gauge not fully charge. So in a situation like this, you're fighting this enemy, your gauge is kind of getting there, and then you can move in and start doing some serious damage, knowing that you'll head into Mysterious Power mode very quickly. Surf also in Mysterious Power is just so great. Like hitting with 2 waves back to back, and like Surf is so good in this mode. Should be noted that Psyduck can be surfing and to use an eject button, use lots of items, use a slow smoke, stuff like that. So you would be able to make plays like that while you are using Surf if you wanted to use that item. Psyduck's gonna have a really interesting role as a very disruptive supporter that can do some really powerful stuff to your opponents, while at the same time setting up big moments where Psyduck is kind of invulnerable, won't take a lot of damage, and also picks up some big time KOs. I feel like this is most closely going to feel a little bit like perhaps Mr. Mime or something like that, where a lot of your job is disrupting your opponents while also dealing actually a surprising amount of damage. Again, it's worth noting that your moves and autos can all be used while you're surfing. I think that's going to be a huge part of this Pokemon's kit. Something also to keep in mind, again, wild Pokemon objectives, that doesn't charge your headache gauge at all. It is only taking damage from opposing Pokemon or allies taking damage near you. You're going to be able to charge this up a lot if you're playing around your team, and using items like Resonant Guard and stuff like that could help you. The reason I say it could help you is because it does not matter if you are taking damage and you have a shield or not. Some things don't trigger when you have shields, but all of your headache gauge will charge even if you are shielded. When looking at held items for Psyduck, there are going to be some really interesting choices here. I do think things like Buddy Barrier could be very popular on this Pokemon. Focus Band, Resonant Guard will be really nice for this Pokemon. Again, you need to take a certain amount of damage before Mysterious Power can activate when your headache gauge fills, so I do think defensive items are going to be huge. You also, of course, could be running things like EXP Share. I think that's going to be a very reasonable choice, as well as a stacking item. The reason a stacking item might make sense for this Pokemon is because, like a lot of these special attackers that are support, defensive, they have low special attack stats, but decent scaling, which means the amount of special attack that influences their move's damage is actually pretty high. Special attack specs could be really nice for that reason, especially if you're trying to play Psyduck as a damage dealer. For emblems, I think something like this, the Math Cord recommended 6 white, 6 blue, 2 green, could be very solid for Psyduck. You're going to want extra HP, you're going to possibly want more defenses, and it's likely that your special attack is going to be so low that a percent bonus won't help you out that much, whereas special attack specs giving you a flat bonus might actually be pretty nice. So there you go, just about everything you need to know before this little guy hits Eos Island. From what I understand, it will be 790 gems upon release, and I want to say it was 13,000 or 14,000 coins. There also will be some specific hollowware for it that looks pretty cool. I'm very excited for this one. A new supporter, we desperately need one, and this does look to be like one of the best releases they've ever had. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I love you, and I'll see y'all next time. We did it.